It's good to be here this morning with you. And today, as you can see, one of the topics that I would like to share with you would be on playful parenting. And it basically covers areas on communication. Now, just a little background as to this topic. Now, I actually, okay, I'm a parent and I actually went through a training of therapeutic play or play therapy. And in the process of all this, I've learned that one of the very effective ways to work with children who have difficult behaviors is actually creatively. And that's why I thought that this was one of the topics that could be interesting to help us reduce the power struggle and in the midst of parenting, help our kids along the way and bond with them. Now, when we look at the word parenting, it sounds serious, tedious. It's a lot of work. Actually, a lot of things come with parenting, but it does not need to be stressful all the time. It can also be playful. Now, sometimes when we talk about being playful, people think of fun and no boundaries, no discipline, but that's not true. So I'm going to share with you a couple of ways, in fact, some principles that we actually use in play therapy that can be applied in parenting as well. So let's look at this, the power of play. I think we all know as parents or as experts or people who are in the area of education, we all know that play is very important. But this is one very powerful phrase that I find. It says that children don't say, I had a hard day at school today. Can I talk to you about it? They say, will you play with me? Now, this is from the author Lawrence Cohen from the book Playful Parenting itself. And I find this phrase so powerful because it speaks of the underlying messages that children send out to us from time to time. So many times when our kids come to us and they say, can you play with me? It's not just about having fun or trying to seek attention or, getting in our way of doing work or doing our things. But it's their underlying messages of telling us that, hey, I need time to connect. I need time to be with you. I need some time to just release my emotions or even my stress or the big feelings that I can't tell anyone else. So that's how they connect with us as adults. Will you play with me? Now let's look at creative communication. So we are talking about playful parenting. We are talking about how we can connect with our kids yet maintain discipline. And one of the ways is actually through communication. In fact, a majority of our time with children is communicating with them. When we want to give them instructions, when we want to guide them, when we are trying to even teach them, it's all about communication. And for kids who are young, our communication needs to be creative because they don't get it when we are serious or when we give direct instructions without tuning in or bonding with them first. Now, just to share with you, it's very important that we establish strong communication from a young age because children who have positive relationship with their parents, they are most likely to maintain open communication with their parents when they become teenagers. So I'm sure that you have heard about parents or people around complaining about teenagers coming home, not wanting to share about their day, closing themselves or putting themselves in a room, not wanting to communicate. Now, if you don't want that to happen, it's very important that at a young age, we build this channel of communication with our children. Because when we maintain a channel of open communication with them, they are likely to trust us later on. And that's where the communication keeps going on, even in their teenage years. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that, when you do all this, your teenagers will not isolate themselves because as they are going through their teenage years, they also have their developmental phase where they are discovering themselves. So sometimes they need their own space, but it will allow them to find you or to come back to you as their safe space. So when children trust us and understand that we are willing to tune into them without judgment. Okay, so the key word here is without judgment, yeah? They feel more secure in sharing their emotions and feelings. Now, why I put there without judgment? Because many times we as adults, be as parents, as educators, or as people that is around the child, yeah, when we work with them or when we speak to them, there tends to be certain level of judgment. You're not helping me because you are not responsible. Why can't you be more hardworking? Why can't you do this and that for me? Now, every time we put a label on a child, every time when we try to get them to or coerce them to do something that we think is important and we put a label on them, it is actually making some form of judgment to their character. So what we want to do in creative communication is that, yes, we still need to guide our kids. We are not giving them the free reign over everything, but we want them to feel secure in the midst of guiding them so that they can share their emotions and feelings with us. So we need to build trust. In our communication, we need to build trust, and that's how all important relationships are built on. And this trust cannot build overnight. So if you have really young kids now, I think it's great that you start working towards building a trusting relationship as young as they are. Now, this trusting relationship, it actually happens at birth. Attachment happens at birth. And it's usually very easy to build this secure relationship in the first year or even like in the first 2 years of life. So every time you hold your child close to you, you baby wear them, you carry your baby and you look at them face to face and you smile at them, that's actually building a form of trust relationship. But the thing is that as the child grows up, so when the child goes into toddlerhood, preschool age, into their primary school years, what happens is that the child starts having a mind of their own and they are exerting a sense of autonomy, meaning they are telling you that, hey, I can make decisions and I want to try to make decisions. That's where the power struggle comes in, because they are no longer taking everything that you are giving to them. They can answer you, they can reject you, and that's where tension builds. So we want to continue to build this trusting relationship. It begins in infancy, and I believe that it's very easy to do that in infancy. Okay, of course, apart from all the crying and children not being able to use words to communicate with us, but once they reach toddlerhood, kindergarten or preschool age and beyond, we need to continue to build this trust, as stressful as it may be. Yeah. And what we actually need is to tune in to our children. So I'm going to get us to just take a couple of seconds to think about this. What does it mean to tune into our kids? So we talk about tuning into radio channels, we talk about tuning into this live show, into TV shows, but what does it really mean to tune into our kids? Now, I think we have all understood what is it like to be physically present for each other 24/7. Right, throughout this MCO, CMCO. Many of us have been home most of the time. We have been together in the same place, under the same roof, within the walls, not having a break from one another, and we are physically present with one another. But does that mean that we are tuning into one another? Does it mean that we are tuning into our children? And basically, this is what tuning in means. When we tune in to our kids or to our children, we are forming an emotional connection. So we are emotionally connected. We are not just physically present, but we are emotionally in tune to one another. And that means that we are able to pick up emotional and behavioral cues and respond to the needs of the child. So being emotionally connected is different from being physically connected. Let me just share with you my experience during this MCO. So like I say, we have all been home together. I've been home with my kids for a longest period of time. And that did not actually necessarily mean that I was emotionally connected with them. We sat on the same table for nearly 6 to 7 hours a day because each of us had our own work to do. I had my work, kids had their schooling. But we were not making connections. We were just physically present and everybody was on their own device doing their own work. Were we able to pick up our emotional and behavioral needs? Well, some of the needs, yes. So for example, needs like, lunchtime, feeding time, a need to take a break and things like that, that happened. But there was very little emotional connection. Now, emotional connection involves verbal and non-verbal communications. Many times when we talk about communication, we expect communication to come to us verbally. Now, as adults, yeah, I think that is a fair expectation because we have sufficient vocabulary to actually help us communicate. But for children, it's very difficult at times for them to communicate, especially when it comes to emotional needs. A child might find it very difficult to come to you and tell you, I am tired. I am overwhelmed. This work is just too much for me. I'm scared. I'm procrastinating because I'm scared. I don't know how to do this. Or I'm being aggressive and violent because there's all these big feelings inside of me that I don't know how to channel it out. Now, they can't verbally tell us. So it comes out in non-verbal communication. And many times for younger kids, it comes out in their behavioral cues. So when we say that they are acting out, they are trying to seek attention, they are whining, they are withdrawing, they have temper tantrums, what are the emotional and behavioral cues that our kids are showing us? So in order for us to tune in, it means that we look beyond those behavior. So if my child is being aggressive, am I going to immediately jump into the scene and say that, hey, you are rough or you are being very aggressive? Or are we going to take a step back and pause and see what's happening there? Is my child being aggressive because he's trying to defend himself? Is my child being lazy, not wanting to do their work because they don't actually understand what's happening with the work? And tuning in means that I understand their feeling. I'm trying to connect to what they feel and work on it. Another principle is actually being empathetic, empathy. Um, I think that, these are familiar words to us. We know that we need to empathize with people. We know that we need to be sympathetic with them. But sometimes when it comes to parenting, because we get overly anxious, and we are concerned about the needs of our kids, we forget that we also need to be empathetic towards them. Okay, now being empathetic towards our children means that we connect with their emotions and we help them express difficult experience or emotions that may not necessarily have the words. So if the child, like I say, is having behavioral difficulties, they are throwing a temper tantrum, or older kids might come home from school and tell you that everything that you give me in school is so boring and so meaningless. I don't understand why we need to do all this. This is them expressing their emotions. And sometimes, because they are in the process of learning how to express themselves, it doesn't come out right. The way they express it may not sound correct. So what we do is that we use gentle guidance. Now, gentle guidance means it can be like sitting beside them after they have done stomping and screaming. Now, many parents that I work with, they tend to ask me this. So they say that, they call this the soft method. So if I use this soft method, which I call the gentle guidance, then my kids tend to go over the boundaries. They think that, they don't have to be afraid of me. They no longer follow my instructions and all that. Now, being gentle doesn't mean that we have no boundaries or we do not set rules or we are not firm. Gentle guidance basically means that we empathize with the child because we want to tune in to their difficult moments. Now, I give you an example of a child who is actually having a very difficult time in school. So he's very unmotivated. When he goes home, when he needs to do his homework, he will procrastinate. Okay, so from time to time, he just procrastinate until the mom has to come in, has to use threats, have to, sometimes she said she actually take the cane and threaten him. Then only he will be willing to sit down and do his work. Now, being gentle doesn't mean that I let my child off, okay, now do whatever you can, you want, you don't have to finish your work. But being gentle means that I sit beside my child and I try to understand and work with my child on this difficult behavior. Okay, so sitting down with my child means that, hey, is there something that we can actually do together so that you can be interested in your study? What is it that's making you so fearful? Maybe we can, take a break. Let's do something interesting first, then we come back to this. Or it can also be like for younger kids, we oftentimes tell them, you sit down and concentrate. Don't be so hyper, or stop fidgeting. So instead of doing that, being empathetic, gentle, and also creative and playful means that, hey, I see that it's difficult for you to sit down at this moment. Why don't we just stand up and do a little jiggle and dance? Then let's get back to work after that. So that's using a gentle guidance. We are still redirecting our children to what's needed to complete, but we use it in a very empathetic manner. We try to get them, or we try to understand their underlying feelings first. So being gentle, or like what I say, when we use the soft method, it doesn't mean that we are agreeing with their bad behavior, because the behavior that we want to change still needs to change. But what I'm saying is that we make connection with our children first. I'm going to give you another example here. Sometimes when kids are throwing their tantrum, so when they get really agitated, they refuse to listen to us, there is crying, screaming, yelling, the immediate response is that we want to stop that behavior. So what we'll do, we'll say, stop that right now. Stop the crying, stop the yelling, stop the shouting. All right. So that's our immediate response. But what I always find helpful is that we go near to the child, connect with them, and we say that, I hear that you are angry, or I hear that you have this really big, frustrating moment. For example, if the child says that I still want to watch my TV, I go to the child and I tell them that you would still like to watch TV, and I hear that you are still uh, very interested in the TV program. Then only I bring in the second instruction. So that's making a connection with the child. And I find many times when we get to their level, when we connect with them first, or sometimes we can even be creative with them, be a little playful, and add a fun element in it, the child calms down much faster than telling them, stop it, stop crying, stop screaming, stop yelling. So when we are empathetic, we create a safe atmosphere to allow our children to express their emotions. We empathize and listen to them before attempting to correct them. So we do not interrupt them. Now, this goes for kids who are slightly older. So if you have children in the primary school age, sometimes they come to you and they are pouring their heart out, and you may be thinking that, it just doesn't make sense. And then you want to step in and tell them that, these are the steps that we can take. But empathy means that even I don't quite agree with it, I'm going to listen to them first. Then only the correction comes in. For kids, obviously, I find that it's very important to be creative and playful in our instructions. Some of the suggestions that I give parents is that sometimes we can do a role reversal. You know how kids come to us and they do pretend play? They say, you be the doctor, I be the patient, and things like that. Now, sometimes in our instructions, we can also be creative and playful. Now, why don't you be the mummy right now? And you give me instructions and I try to follow you. So we have a little role playing. It can be role reversal. It can be something that is funny that your kids enjoy. It can be talking to a puppet or to even a doll, and giving them that instruction and showing them, modeling to them how the puppet or the doll will respond to those instructions. That's being creative and playful. So what I'm basically saying is that when we want to tune in with our children, we need to connect with them at their level. Now, like it or not, because we are the adults, so we got to do the harder work. I know that sometimes it seems like, why must I do that to my kids? Why can't they just listen to me? Well, I'm just sharing all this because I'm also saying that children have a different way of understanding messages, and the message that we give them or the message that they are sharing to us is very subtle sometimes. So we really need to take time to empathize and to tune in with them. Now, I'm also going to share some of these statements. It's called the reflective statements. So I find these statements very helpful to help us tune in and empathize with kids. All right. So these are some of the examples. Now, if the child says, I don't want to do that homework, it's useless. Normal adult reaction is that you do it because it's good for you. There must be a reason for your teachers to give you that homework. Or you tell them, don't say that. Homework is helpful for you. Now, being empathetic and tuning in to my child means that I will say something along these lines. I'll tell my kid, you're telling me that you don't see the meaning of doing that homework. Okay, so that's basically reflecting what my child is saying to me. Now, we use that a lot in therapy, in play therapy, because we want the child to be understood. So we tell them, we make reflective statements so that we get the child correctly. Now, I did not put in the following statements. So a child can respond by saying yes. So you tell the child, you're telling me that you don't see the meaning of doing the homework. The child will say, yes, it's useless. So they might repeat the same thing. And we reflect the statement again. And once the child is ready, then we can step in and say, let's find a way that we can work together so that you find some meaning in that homework. How about breaking this homework into chunks? How about we come in and do some different projects so that we make this homework interesting and so that you find that you learn something from it. All right. Now, the second example, if a child yells and whines, so these are for younger kids actually, for the preschool age kids, and they tell you things like, I don't want to sleep, I want to watch TV. All right. And they go into this whole big temper tantrum instead of a threat. So usually we'll go like, okay, I'm going to count to 3. If you do not off that TV, you may not have TV for the next few days. Yeah. Now, being empathetic and tuning into the child is telling the child that, hey, I see that you would still like to watch more TV. Pause for a moment, and the kid may go on yelling and whining, and they may come back to you saying, yes, what I want to watch TV, I'm not going to sleep. And if we get down to their level and say that a few more times, I see that you want to watch TV. This TV program is very interesting. You know what? I too feel very interested in this TV program. However, it may be a little late, and I would like you to be alert tomorrow. What can we do? Maybe tomorrow we can wake up earlier to watch this TV program. So we provide suggestions after reflecting their emotions or their feelings. If a child says, I cannot do this on my own, come and help me. You can say that, you would like me to help you out with this. Instead of saying, why don't you try it by yourself first? That's being instructive. But being empathetic is saying that you would like me to help you. You would like me to look at this together with you. So these are basically some of the reflective statements that we can use to help our children feel heard and understood. Now, many times when their behavior gets much more difficult and much more challenging, it is usually because they don't feel heard and they don't feel understood. So what I'm going to do next, you can get your kids involved in this as well, is to actually show you an example of how we can actually tune in to our children's emotional and behavioral needs. Now, in this activity, all the materials that's needed is easily found at home, okay? So you can use art blocks, papers, recycled papers, that's totally fine. Because these materials are just tools for us to connect with with our children. You can also use color pencil, crayons, or even if you do not have much of these materials, it's fine. Grab whatever that you have with you. And in this activity, I would like you to actually pay attention to your child's lead, means let your child take the lead. Pay attention to your child's ideas pay attention to your child's non-verbal cues. Okay, so if you have your child with you, maybe right now what you can do is just grab a piece of paper, both of you. So a parent should have a paper, child should also have a paper. If your child is not with you and this is something that you want to do over the weekend or some other times, prepare sufficient materials for both you and the child. So the traditional way of doing it is like, okay, what would you like to do? I'm going to ask my child, what would you like to do? And my child say, okay, I want to do some painting. Then we prepare stuff, right? We take the art block, put it in front of the kid. We take the watercolor or poster colors, put it in front of them, and we sit in front of them and we go like, okay, color, show me what you want to color. Now in this activity that I'm sharing with you, it's nothing about showing me, it's about doing it together with them. So if you have your art blocks, your paper, there needs to be 2 sets. It comes in a pair. If you have like your color pencils or crayons, make sure that you have sufficient materials so that both of you can have it. And in this activity, let your child take the lead. Allow your child to decide what to do with the crayons and paper or even art block. So if your child says that I want to draw, if you are taking this activity right now with your child, let your child take the lead and decide what they want to draw. And as you are watching your child drawing, I would like you to also match the energy of your child. Now, and what it means to match the energy of your child is this. When your child picks up colors, okay, so if say your child is picking up a crayon, coloring, matching the energy is also picking up a crayon myself and following the rhythm that my child goes at. So if my child is moving really fast, scribbling, I'm going to also scribble on my paper. If my child is taking some time looking down at the paper, slowly drawing, I'm going to make contact, face-to-face contact with my child. I'm going to look at my child, but also gently look at my own paper and draw slowly. Now, like I say here, the activity here is not about the end product. So it's not about producing a wonderful art piece, but it's about making connection, allowing your child to take the lead. So as you go on, let the child take the lead, draw what they need to. Your focus should be, as a parent, your focus should be on the child's facial and emotional expression. So don't take your eyes off their facial expression. So as we are actually drawing, keep your eye on the child's emotional expression. Focus on what they are coming out, whatever ideas they have, even when you don't like it, hold it in. And I'm going to give you an example. Many times when kids pick colors, we also try to influence the colors that they are picking. Okay, so if say my child has done a scribble and they are drawing a human face, okay, and they are wanting to color, we usually tell them, can you pick the yellow or the brown or the orange color, and we tell them what color to use. Yeah, but sometimes a child might not want to, they might go like that. All right, and tuning into our child means that we hold back whatever we want to say. We are not going to say that, it's impolite to do this to a human figure. It's not nice when we do not put nice colors on a human figure. It's not nice if you are coloring out of line. No, tuning into our kids means that at that particular moment, we are focusing on the child's emotions. And their emotions, their actions, their energy tells us a lot about what is happening within them. So are they having high energy level, or are they pressing in very hard in their art, in their drawing? And we are focusing on all that. So if our child needs help, we can provide some kind of suggestions that both of you can do together. And one of the example can be this. So some kids actually, they come in and you tell them that, hey, let's do a drawing together. You take a lead. Some kids may be at loss because if they are not used to this idea of taking the lead, they might say, I don't know what to do. We usually wait for a few minutes before stepping in. But if your child is really at loss of what to do, what you can also do is that maybe you can draw a heart together, and you can say, we are going to do a little drawing in this heart, and we are going to draw things that is close in our heart. So it can be what's in my heart. So it can be things like, it can be color coding my emotions. I'm going to put different colors to show you what's in my heart. It can be things, it can be a free drawing, so that both of you have a time to share with one another what's in your heart. So as we are working on things on this activity, as your child is working on his or her idea, match their energy. Like I say, be in tune. So being in tune means being at the child's level. Some kids, they like to be leaning forward or lying down on the floor as they are coloring, drawing, and scribbling. Now, as much as possible, if you can match that level, if you can also be on the floor with them, that would be great. So that helps us to actually tune in with our kids. And when we are doing activities like that, I'm going to say this, that it can be emotionally and mentally very tiring and very overwhelming, because you are not going to say much, you are not going to give them instructions, but you are just going to stay present with them. Okay, so this is something that I can suggest. I'm not sure if you are doing it right now, but this is something that I would suggest that you can do with your kids and try to practice this tuning in, empathy, reflective statements. So if a child says that my drawing is very ugly, my response should not be, no lah, it's not ugly. See, it's so nice. It can be, tell me, why do you think it's ugly? Or if you want to guide them further, it can be like, okay, so what do you think we should do to make this drawing more interesting? It can also be things like, some kids, they come to us and they draw and they tell us, do you like this drawing? Being in tune with our kids doesn't mean that we immediately jump. We want to make them feel good, and we might want to immediately jump and say, oh yeah, this drawing is so nice, it's so good, so wonderful. But if our kids come in and tell us, do you like this drawing? Being in tune with them gets me to ask them, what do you think about this drawing? Do you like your own drawing? And from there, pick up what our kids are trying to tell us. All right, so I hope that these suggestions can actually help you in a way or other as you connect and communicate with your child. Like I say, it can be emotionally tiring, because if you don't like art, if you don't like play, and your kids come to you and ask you to do that with them, it can be mentally very tiring. But spend just a couple of minutes just to do that with them. So being in tune means that, no devices, we are not going to be distracted and let that message come in and distract us. We are not going to check our emails and all that and tell them, 1 minute, I will come back to this work with you. No, being in tune with them means that 5 or 10 minutes that you want to communicate with them is solely for them. So I am going to suggest that you set aside certain time of the day or the week to do this kind of activities. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to maybe look at this activity. I'm not sure if you're doing it or not, but if you're doing it, maybe I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to try it on, so that you can have a feel of how it goes. remember that it's not the end product, all right? So it's about how you are actually connecting with your child. So if your child is sitting down with you right now, you're doing this, have a good laugh with them if they're laughing. Pay attention, like I say, pay attention to their facial, their emotional expression. If they're having difficulty, sit in there and ask them how you can support or how you can actually, have fun or be with them. So I'm just going to give you another few minutes. And if you are working with your child on this, and if you have any questions, do ask them so that I can also answer them along the way. Okay, just one more minute, maybe. Okay, now, so this is suggestion on an activity on how you can actually spend some time with your child and do something that you can actually tune in with them. Now I know that it may not be something very easy, especially if you do this for the first time, because what's happening is this. As parents or as adults, we have our own schemas of how a parent-child relationship would be. I think I began this session by sharing with you that I came up with this topic because of my experience in play therapy and my experience as a parent. Now I would also like to share with you a little bit of my background, because my background is actually in psychology, and psychology, as you know, it's about the understanding human behavior, and a lot of the techniques that I've learned in my course or in my studies are very cognitive and behavioral techniques, and I'm going to explain to you what it means. So cognitive and behavioral techniques basically means that I understand human behavior. I understand the reason why a child might be throwing their tantrum. I understand why a child at a particular age can do this or cannot do that, and I also understand how I should respond. All right, so I have a very methodological kind of way to respond to humans and to children. But the wonderful thing about looking more into playful parenting, as I was doing play therapy, is this. I find that sometimes we need to also understand ourselves before we can work with our kids. So I'm going to give you a very simple example here. I like quiet activities. So I like activities that doesn't require me to move a lot. If I can sit down and just read a book, that would be a perfect activity for me. But having kids, having my own kids, I realized that, hey, that's not possible. I have a child who needs to do things all the time, all kind of activities. They need to be moving around, they need to be baking, they need to be doing something. If not, they feel bored. I also have a child who doesn't mind sitting around, just sitting around, daydreaming, looking at things, and they will be perfectly satisfied. So I have kids of different energy level, and they have different needs as well. And what I find is that as an adult or as a parent, when I need to match that kind of their needs, because initially what happens is that, when they ask me to engage in activities that is really tiring, I will tell them, can you just do it by yourself? And I find that it doesn't connect. It doesn't help me to connect with them. So what I find that is helpful is that at times, as parents, because tuning in and being empathetic to our kids requires so much of emotional and mental energy. So I find that what can be actually helpful is setting aside small chunk of time that is feasible. For example, I set aside 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes a day for each child. So 3 kids, I have 5 minutes. I call it the one-to-one time with them. And in these 5 minutes, my kids have the say of choosing whatever activity they want to do. So the one who is very energetic will choose like moving activity that is physical, badminton, running around. The one who is not so energetic will choose like a cuddle activity or book reading activity. So I find that when we break it down into smaller time, and at a smaller chunks, it helps us to be, or it helps it be feasible for us to be fully present and emotionally connected at that point of time. Sorry. And yeah, so I think that, if we are not used to this kind of activities, what can happen is that we take time to practice it first. And like I said, it's a lot of holding back, because many times we just want to guide and we want to come up with instruction, but it takes some time to just hold back. Now, I understand that there are some question and answers, so maybe I can pass the time to Samantha.
Hi, thank you, Julie, for the sharing. There's a saying, help us connect. I think that's why being a playful parent is really important. And then here we do have some questions from the parents. Over here, I think this happens in most of the family when they have a siblings. Over here, they say that, how can I handle the emotion of the elder child if, let's say, the child feel frustrated or angry over the young brothers when they are like wanting the same toys or selecting the same cartoon to watch and all these things. So how do you handle the elders one? Because usually parents,
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the question. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you because I also have older kids and younger kids, and I can tell you that it's not easy to do this. Immediate response would be to tell the older one to give in to the younger child. You know, why do you actually need to fight with your younger child? Um, but you know, as we are practicing this playful parenting, what we can do is that, like I say, one of the ways is to begin with, what we can do is that we can acknowledge the child's feeling. So if my older child is feeling frustrated, I will go to my older child and actually acknowledge what my child is feeling. So I will tell him or tell her, you know, I can see that you are really frustrated, and it must be very difficult for you to give up that toy or that cartoon for your younger brother. Perhaps you can share with me after your brother is done with this toy or this cartoon. Perhaps you can tell me what would you like to do, and I'm going to give you some time to do that. Or while your brother is watching that cartoon or playing that toy, can we do something together? Can I do something together with you? So we acknowledge the feeling, we acknowledge the frustration, the anger, and all that. Then we come up with suggestions. Yeah. It's not going to be easy. There will still be some whining and crying and temper throwing, but as we are acknowledged, we begin to empathize and acknowledge their feeling, they will calm down eventually.
Okay, there's another question here. This mom is said that she have two boys, 2.5 years old and 4.5 years old. Just now you said that it's good to have we break the time whereby we give 5 minutes to the youngest one and 5 minutes to the eldest one. And how about if, let's say, I want to connect them all together, like at the same time? Do you have any like tricks or tips for them if, let's say, I want to bring everyone together to spend time with?
Okay, so 2.5 years and 4.5 years, it's a bit challenging because the 2.5 years will not know personal space yet. So I can see why the child might need to come in. So if say I have allocated time for my 4.5 years child to build a puzzle together, I can see how that 2.5-year-old boy might also come in and want to be part of it. So connect. What I would suggest is that when you have more than one child, find activities that is suitable for both the age group. And you know, the one-on-one time should be individual activities that is only suitable for one person. But if you have more than one child, what's important is that you find things that both the child can do together. It may be like building blocks first. So for example, instead of going one-on-one, it can be like, you know, let's do this together. Why don't you build a taller block? And why don't the 2.5 years old, you know that his blocks cannot be really high. Why don't you build a block with a straight line and show me that, you know, this is a railway or it's a road, and the higher one, the older one, can be something more challenging. So find activities where you feel that, you know, both of them can actually have the similar interest in, if you have more than one kid. But having said that, I'm also saying that if there is any form of opportunity, most of the time sibling rivalries or difficult behaviors come in because our children don't feel that they have connected with us. So if there is an opportunity throughout the day, do try to find that short 5 minutes with one child, especially the 4.5-year-old child, because he will need that personal connection. The toddler is already clinging on all the time, so the older kid will need that 5 minutes connection. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, I think besides being a playful parent, I think we need to be a creative parents as well to come up a lot of ideas and tricks and all these things.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's another question here. There's a which they private message us to say that, because since we said that we need to set a boundary, we need to discipline our kids. So when we talk about punishment, is that good things that we do a punishment to our kids by asking them to stand at the corner like 5 to 10 minutes? This type of punishment, is that considered okay to do that?
Okay, so again, we are looking at some behavioral techniques. So, for example, if say the kids have got into a fight, I have children and they are fighting with one another, and I want to pull them apart. So everybody is angry with one another, they are hitting one another. I want to pull them apart. So the idea of putting a child in a corner, or we used to call it time out, is so that they don't hurt one another. So we pull them apart, put them in a corner, so that we want to keep them safe. But I'm going to also say this: tuning in with our kids, it means that we, instead of spending time out, we actually have time in or tune in with them. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when we put kids in a corner, especially in heated situations, so whenever a punishment happens, it's usually when everybody's emotions are high. As a parent, I'm already very angry, I'm stressed out. As a child, I'm also very angry because my needs are not met and I'm not heard. So when we put them in the corner, what's going to happen is that the child becomes angry. And instead of thinking of their mistakes and thinking of the consequences of their mistakes, they are going to think of how they can revenge. So if I put number one in the corner because you have hit your younger brother, number one is going to think of the 101 ways of how I'm going to get I'm going to make a revenge on my younger brother. So instead of doing that, it will be better to have time in with them, pull them one side, connect with them. So again, acknowledge their emotions. I could see that you were very frustrated just now. Hey, there's this big thing going on and you guys were already hurting one another. How about we take deep breaths together? So with younger kids, I will tell them, let's imagine a rainbow and we take rainbow breaths, or we blow bubbles, for young children, you can blow bubbles to regulate our breathing. How about we do that together until you are calm? Then only we correct them. So whatever lecture or that you want to give them comes after they are calm, after I am calm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because we are running out of time, so I hope that we managed to answer some of the questions just now. And if you still have more questions to ask Julie, please continue to comment on it here, and Julie will reply your answer after this section. So, and also like and follow Seek Connection Facebook page, so you will be able to get up-to-date info from them. So Julie, before we end this section, do you have any other things to share with our viewer today?
Okay. Yeah, so basically maybe just to give you some updates on upcoming events. These are some of the upcoming events that we have in Seek Connections. The Feeling First Aid Kit. This is about understanding feelings for adults, so that we can help our children. It's in Chinese. There is also another one on understanding learning difficulties. Now, if you would like more information on all these talks, or even questions that you have, you can just connect with us through our phone number, or even follow us on our Facebook page, because we do post up daily information. So I think that's all from my end today, Samantha.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us today. So it's time to say goodbye, and once again, thanks a lot for your sharing today, Julie. So see you again. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.